Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. I'm absolutely pumped to guide you through this one. Today, we're taking a deep dive into the fascinating world of the brain to uncover the actual neuroscience behind success, anxiety, motivation, and memory. We're going to completely demystify the biological systems that are running your ambition behind the scenes. Look, if you're someone who pushes hard to achieve your goals, understanding your own neurobiology, that's literally the ultimate upgrade. Let's get right into it.
So let's address what we call the high achievers paradox right out of the gate. You're performing at a high level, right? You're meeting every expectation, handling your responsibilities, and outwardly everything looks absolutely fantastic. But internally, something just feels off. What's absolutely crucial to understand here is that it is remarkably difficult to recognize the hidden toll of anxiety when you are visibly succeeding. You might think you're just incredibly driven, but underneath it all, your nervous system might actually be running on fumes.
Okay, let's dive into our agenda for today. We'll start with the high achievers paradox, then we'll explore what fuels ambition, the actual price of chronic stress, how your memory works, the anatomy of addiction, and finally, restoring your brain's balance.
Starting with Section 1, the high achievers paradox.
We really need to reframe how we think about modern mental health. It's not a personal failure, it's a systemic hardware overload. Just think about this for a second. Globally, 1 in 8 people live with a mental disorder, and a staggering 77% report that stress is actively impacting their physical health. So if you're feeling overwhelmed, you've got to know it is an incredibly common biological reality. It is not a weakness, it's just your biology responding to an environment it wasn't historically designed to handle. We've built a world that constantly demands our attention, and our ancient hardware, well, it's really feeling the strain.
Moving right along to Section 2, fueling ambition.
Say hello to your nucleus accumbens. This is your brain's deep motivational structure. It receives dopamine from the ventral tegmental area, and this exact pathway fuels everything from your basic survival instincts to your most ambitious drives. This is the circuit that makes you actually want to achieve. In fact, if you look at the neurochemical transmission of dopamine hitting the nucleus accumbens, it is exactly what differentiates the drive of someone willing to do the grueling work to climb Mount Everest from the drive of a couch potato eating chips while watching someone else climb the mountain on TV. It is the exact same fundamental hardware, but it's deployed entirely differently.
Now, there is a massive difference between two types of motivation here. On one side, we have healthy, process-driven performance. This is where the dopamine reward is internally generated by positive engagement with the work itself. Doing the task because the process puts you in a state of flow. But on the other side, we have fear-driven performance. Think of someone like Napoleon. He achieved incredible things, for sure, but it was largely driven by a paranoid survival instinct on the battlefield. It produces rapid results, but it chronically activates the nervous system's stress response. Basically, it's the difference between pursuing a goal because you genuinely love the climb versus sprinting up the mountain because you are terrified of what's chasing you.
Which leads us perfectly into Section 3, the price of chronic stress.
Enter the amygdala. Think of this tiny, almond-shaped region in your brain as your internal smoke detector. It's responsible for threat detection, it's evolutionarily ancient, and it's structurally conserved across all mammalian species. This is the biological alarm system that tells you when danger is present. And when that alarm goes off, it triggers a rapid biological cascade. The amygdala perceives a threat, which activates the hypothalamus, which tells your pituitary gland to signal your adrenal glands, which then release a massive hit of cortisol. Bam! That cortisol instantly mobilizes glucose directly into your muscles so you can fight or run away. Now, this is beautifully designed if you need to escape a predator 50,000 years ago, but it is absolutely disastrous for modern office stress. When your boss simply raises an eyebrow at you in a meeting, your brain doesn't know the difference. It launches this exact same massive biological preparation for a physical fight that, well, is never actually going to happen. So, what happens if you're always stressed? Your body essentially stops prioritizing long-term health, leading to some compounding, measurable damage. Digestion stalls because, hey, your body assumes you don't need to digest lunch if you're about to be lunch. Your immune system starts operating aberrantly, inflammation markers rise steadily in your blood, and incredibly, and a bit terrifyingly, your hippocampus, the brain region responsible for memory, actually begins to shrink and lose its dendrite branches. Speaking of the hippocampus, let's jump into Section 4, how your memory works. Okay, this next concept is absolutely mind-blowing. It's called an engram. Your brain does not store memories like files in a static filing cabinet. Instead, a memory is reconstructed dynamically from a pattern of neural activation.
Your brain is essentially a master pattern completion machine. If you encounter a partial cue, like, say, a specific smell from your childhood or a song from 10 years ago, it can trigger an entire emotional landscape to reactivate. This also perfectly explains the illusion of déjà vu. When a new environment shares just enough layout or colors with an old engram, your brain partially activates the old pattern and tricks you into feeling like you've actually been there before. How crazy is that?
Let's look at how these memories are actually categorized. We've got procedural memory, things like how to ride a bike, stored deep in the striatum and cerebellum. You don't even think about it, you just do it. Then we have explicit memory, the actual events and facts of your life. What's super fascinating here is that explicit memories are formed first in the hippocampus, but over time, they are gradually distributed outward and copied across the cortex. This brilliantly illustrates why older memories survive much longer in dementia patients. A recent memory is fragile and localized, but a 40-year-old memory? That's been copied across so many regions of the brain that localized damage can't easily erase it.
All right, shifting gears to Section 5, the anatomy of addiction.
Let's talk about how this hardware can get hijacked by comparing natural rewards against artificial ones. Natural rewards, like eating good food, human connection, or a hard-earned accomplishment, provide a modest, healthy stream of dopamine right into your nucleus accumbens. But artificial rewards, we're talking social media notifications, refined sugar, gambling, alcohol, they completely overwhelm the circuit. They dump a tidal wave, an abnormal flood of dopamine that is far, far outside the range human beings were evolutionarily designed to handle.
To protect itself from this crazy tidal wave, the brain predictably recalibrates. It turns its baseline sensitivity downward to maintain equilibrium. This is absolutely crucial to understand. Addiction isn't a moral failure. It's not a lack of willpower. It's a physiological restructuring. Once the brain turns down the volume, natural rewards like a beautiful sunset, a great meal, or just hanging out with friends suddenly feel completely flat and colorless. The only thing that moves the needle is that artificial substance or the digital notification, and you end up needing more and more of it just to feel normal.
So how do we fix this? Section 6, restoring your brain's balance.
First, I want to drop a surprising scientific nugget from the labs of top neuroscientists like Dr. Vidita Vaidya. We usually just think of serotonin as the feel-good chemical, right? But it does something far more mechanical. It directly regulates mitochondria, the energy power stations inside your cells. During periods of high demand, serotonin doesn't just help create more mitochondria, it literally boosts their cellular energy efficiency. It's like upgrading the power grid of a city during a massive heat wave. It gives your brain the raw, energetic resilience it needs to cope with stress.
So how do we actually naturally restore this resilience? Here's a high-performance protocol based entirely on neurobiology. You have to forcefully challenge the push harder myth. True biological resilience requires intentional nervous system recovery, period. You must build in activities that trigger your parasympathetic nervous system. That's your rest and digest mode. This means engaging in genuinely unproductive leisure. And no, not a hobby you turn into a side hustle, but something purely for joy. Prioritize a good night's sleep to let your brain heal. Your nervous system is simply not designed to run at 100% capacity indefinitely without breaking down.
Here's a fast, incredibly practical hack for shifting your perspective, shared by Dr. Vaidya. Go step outside, stand on some green grass, and literally just look up at the sky. Look at the immense scale of the universe. When you physically remind your brain that you are just one small transient being on a tiny planet, the perceived magnitude of your daily stressors instantly shrinks. It is a profound, immediate way to just turn off that false alarm in your amygdala.
Which brings us to our final provocative question. I want you to really consider your daily habits, your stress levels, and the way you push yourself. Are you optimizing your brain for temporary survival, constantly relying on fear and artificial dopamine? Or are you optimizing it for sustainable success, building in the actual recovery and purpose-driven focus your neurobiology fundamentally needs? It's a choice, and you have the power to make it. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. I really hope this empowers you to master your own neurobiology and redefine what true achievement looks like for you. See you next time.